Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Arian Musliu, and I'll be presenting a topic regarding the beneficial effects of the 7Cs model of positive youth development post-traumatic stress disorder among young people in post-war Kosovo. And in this case, we are looking for the mediating role of emotion regulation. And before presenting myself, I would like to thank Alma for organizing this event. And I'm happy to be one of the presenters in the event. And also, I would like to thank my colleagues, Arlinda Fitem and Professor Radosveta Dimitrova, who's supervising this project, which is funded by the Division 40A of Peace Psychology under the APA. So before everything else, first, let me introduce myself. As I said earlier, my name is Arian Musliu. I'm currently a teaching assistant at Faculty of Education, University of Prishtina. And also I am a Ph.D. student at Ludwig Maximilian University under the Department of Learning Sciences. I'm currently working on the field of emotions, but also I have some keen interest in peace psychology, and this is for several reasons. One of the reasons has to be with Kosovo, so the place where I was born. During 1998, and 1999, Kosovo was part of an armed conflict, or let me say a war with Serbia and the region of Balkan, and I was very young during that time. So I remember glimpses of war. I remember all the trauma that people experience, and that sometimes they even get back to that trauma, and they tell me about it since I'm a psychologist. And everything that happened in Kosovo during that time left a scar in everyone in the entire population, and also in me as a child during that time. So this is probably the main reason why I started to work on the peace psychology projects as well, and also integrating the emotion component as I'm working in this direction at Ludwig Maximilian University. Next, let me talk a little bit about Kosovo. Let me tell you about this country. Well, after war, so we are independent only 2008. So it passed. So some time passed before we got our independence, and we still are working our way through, and we are still developing. However, when you look at the data, the recent data, for example, the data from OECD, you can see clearly that the youth well-being in Kosovo lags behind other OECD's average scores or countries. And in this direction, OECD also considered Kosovo as one of low to middle income countries. Although recently we moved to the middle income countries, but we are still on the bottom of the list. And because of this well-being of youth in Kosovo, there's search for needs for interventions in such countries like Kosovo, especially after the post-war, after Kosovo is a post-war country. And on the other hand, there's a lack of funds for research and training in, especially in the field of psychology, and also in the field of peace psychology, since we don't often talk about this topic here. And in the end, there's a lack of programs that focus on positive youth development and that fosters the decision-making abilities of the youth in general in Kosovo. What we tried to do, so before we came up with this study that I'm going to present, we looked at the data and the evidence that we have so far. And what we clearly know is that traumatics impact our well-being in general, and there are these PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, that it's caused, especially in post-war countries in Kosovo. I talked earlier about this. So probably every second man or woman that I met in Kosovo talks about war and there's scars in their life. So they talk about the stress that they still experience because of that, and this can be considered as one of the main symptoms of the PTSD. So the PTSD is a disorder in which most of the cases you go back to the traumatic event that happened. You remember that, and that causes stress in real time after so many years. So this probably would be a very simple definition of the PTSD. And usually it's the cause for other disorders as well. And it also affects our life greatly. And the other thing that it's interesting about PTSD is that the recent evidence is it's talking about this transgenerational trauma. So it's not only me, for example, that experienced war that it's gonna be affected from PTSD most probably, but also my children will basically get some of this stress that I experience and that I will experience. So if this is not taken into consideration, and if no one is getting in some kind of intervention in this direction, PTSD can be a cause for stress for other generations to come as well. What we realized in this direction is that if we develop programs, these programs can help a lot youth in Kosovo. For example, one of the models that is highly recognized, and the professor Radosveta Dimitrova is also working on in this field, is the 7Cs model of positive youth development. I'm going to quickly tell you what all these 7Cs means. So competence is the first component, is basically a positive view of one access in specific area, for example, social, academic, cognitive, vocational skills, language, whatever. The second one is confidence, so the internal sense of positive self-worth and self-efficacy. The third one is connections, positive bonding with peers. The fourth is character, respect for societal norms, interpersonal values and skills, and also moral commitment. The fifth C is a caring, a sense of empathy and sympathy for others. Then the one's ability to contribute in the society would be contribution. And the last one, but not the least, is creativity. So the ability to adapt to novel situation. This is why it's called the 7Cs model, because all these components start with a C, and there are 7 of them, and all 7 should be fulfilled in order to achieve what's called positive development. And what we also suggested in this direction is, so the question was, does emotion regulation affect the relationship between PTSD symptoms and the 7Cs model? And we truly believe this. One of the reasons is because of the effect of emotion regulation directly on the PTSD. So if an individual has a good emotional regulation skills, then his or her PTSD symptoms will decrease. In this sense, if a young person undergoes the positive youth program and fulfills all the 7Cs, then probably he or she will have a great set of emotional regulation skills ready to be used, and in this sense, decrease the PTSD symptoms. In this direction, what we aimed was to basically contribute to the existing literature based on what we find in Kosovo in a post-war country. So this can be also generalized, or maybe someone else can get some of the information from our context. And the idea was to identify the effects of 7Cs on PTSD symptoms through emotion regulation skills. And this was planned to be done by using some more advanced analysis like latent path models and to identify what the best predictors are. Um, Overall, this would be the conceptual model. So 7Cs would be basically the independent variable, emotion regulation would be in the middle, and in the end we'll have the PTSD symptoms. Of course, these bubbles represented here are second order latent factors, as we know that this 7Cs is basically compiled of 7 different components measured with several different um, items. And similarly, emotion regulation has 2 main components, so suppression and reappraisal, which are also measured with different items. So in the end, we will have more bubbles, and the idea is to see which components affect which one and how these are entirely mediated by emotion regulation scales, and if these decrease the PTSD symptoms among youth in Kosovo. And we already conducted this study, but we did not do the full analysis, but I'm going through the methods. So basically, we collected data from around 300 young people in Kosovo, and there were several different instruments that we used, for example, emotion regulation questionnaire, or we measured 7Cs using the model of positive youth development. Also, we had a PTSD checklist and several other variables just to compare the results and validate basically our results, and also some social demographic questions because they are in our interest as well. And this was done by collecting data through online platforms, and also we conducted some paper surveys with informed consents within the classrooms of universities here in Kosovo. Okay, now this is the best part. We have some preliminary analysis that I've done especially for this presentation, and it's as expected. So the 7Cs is positively correlated with emotion regulation, and the higher the 7Cs are in value, then the higher is the scales of emotional regulation of one individual. And then after that, emotional regulation is negatively related with PTSD symptoms. And as you can see, so the effect of 7Cs is mediated by the effect of emotional regulation. Of course, we don't know separately which component of the 7C affect which component of emotional regulation and what is mediated and what is not, and if there's no relationship between any of the components of the 7C with the PTSD symptoms directly or indirectly. But that's the analysis to come soon, and hopefully we'll get some decisions. So we'll get some informed results and design interventions from this. Why we did all this is because we believe that there's some potential contribution to peace psychology. First is policies interventions for youth in post-war countries like Kosovo, and this would be basically to present this data to the government and try to give them more evidence on how to design such programs, such positive youth development programs in order for them to be part of the schools and help students increase their emotional regulation skills, and in this sense, their post-traumatic stress symptoms. The second reason was to promote positive development, to promote emotional regulation skills and coping. Basically, this is what we want to know is which program works and which doesn't. And hopefully we'll find some data in this sense that basically let us know that the positive youth concept works in this field. And there are some implication for other war-affected countries now. Recently, we talk a lot about the Ukraine, and I hope that the war there will end soon. And once it ends, we have to be ready to intervene in terms of preparing the youth, in terms of having some kind of intervention on psychological aspects as well. And this paper, I think, will be another basis for that. And the last goal is basically to disseminate our findings through journal and write some brief reports for other to read, and create a web page for the entire study, in order for study other researchers and students and everyone else who is interested to learn more about the 7Cs model, and also how to promote positive youth development in post-war countries like Kosovo. So with this, I would like also to thank APA 48 Division for funding this study, and all the colleagues that worked in conducting this study. And again, thank you, Alma, for having me, and thank you for listening to this presentation. Have a great week, day ahead.